There we go. We'll dive in this morning. We'll get going. I know that we just finished up First Samuel, the book of First Samuel, which we've been on that for a few weeks, and now we're going to transition into Second Samuel. Um, so I'm going to kind of give a chapter overview of what you'll see or hear, or what we'll talk about here, regardless of who the teacher is, over the next few weeks. That will kind of dive in and dig out some details here in the second book of Samuel. What this book is really about is it's a summary of the 40 years of David's reign. Um, Before, we've walked through with David being a shepherd. We've walked through David being invited into King Saul's palace and forming a relationship with Jonathan. We've walked through now David as a warrior. We've seen different parts of David. David as a warrior, David as a songwriter, David as he can write poetry. David can do a little bit of everything, and because of that, that's what put him at odds with the same one that brought him into the palace, which was King Saul. So now in this chapter, it opens with Saul's death. So King Saul is now dead or has died, and we also kind of dig in a little bit and some details on how David even received the crown, how he became king. At the end of this chapter, which will be, I'm sorry, at the end of this book, the Second Samuel, the book, which should be probably more than 4 weeks. It'll end with David. We see him. He's still alive, but he's at an old, tender age, and we start seeing the transition from him into who's next. But throughout this book of Second Samuel, David, we see how he unites all of Israel. He brings all of Israel together. And then we also see from another perspective how Israel, remember, this is the group that came out of Egypt. They were they had been brainwashed, or so to speak, their culture was kind of identical to the oppressors. And we see them go through a journey of how they now have to be called back to God, because these are his people, the Jewish culture, the Jewish people. These are the ones that he selected and said, this is my group. These are my people. So throughout this book of Second Samuel, we see how Israel's religious development takes place over time. So some of the themes that are presented in this chapter is you're going to see some outrageous sin, some things that happen. You're like, my goodness, some outrageous sin, some deep repentance. We also see great prosperity from the group of the Israelites and Israel as a nation, unusual blessings, severe afflictions, and then some punishments that are handed out. All right, so this is a book that's going to take us on a roller coaster ride. So my assignment today is the first chapter, the whole first chapter. So we've got some running to do. So what I'm going to do is we're going to kind of talk about the first part of it. Then we'll kind of go into some questions and some things like that. And then at the end, I'll bring in the back part of the scripture. So we're going to start off reading verse 1. And it says, now it happened after the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, that he stayed 2 days in Ziklag. On the third day, a man came unexpectedly from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head, as in mourning. When he came to David, he bowed to the ground and lay himself face down in an act of great respect and submission. Then David asked him, where do you come from? He said, I have escaped from the camp of Israel. David said to him, how did it go? Please tell me, he answered. Well, the people have fled from the battle. Also, many of the people have fallen and are dead. In fact, Saul and Jonathan, his son, are also dead. So David said to the young man, hold on, who informed him? How do you know Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? And the young man who told him explained, by chance, I just happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear. and the chariots and the horsemen of the Philistines were close behind him. When he turned to look behind him, he saw me and called to me, and I answered, here I am. He asked me, who are you? I answered him, I am an Amalekite. He said to me, stand up, facing me, and kill me, for terrible agony has come over me, yet I still live, and I will be taken alive. Well, so I stood facing him and killed him, because I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. Then I took the crown which was on his head and the band which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord. Verse 11. Then David grasped his own clothes and tore them in mourning. So did all the men who were with him. They mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and Jonathan his son, and for the Lord's people and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword in battle. David said to the young man, who informed him, where are you from? He answered, I am the son of a foreigner, an Amalekite. David said to him, how is it that you were not afraid to put out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? David called one of the young men and said, go execute him. So he struck the Amalekite and he died. David said to the fallen man, your blood is on your own head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. Then David sang this dirge, or funeral song, over Saul and his son Jonathan. And he told them to teach the sons of Judah the song of the bow. Now I'm going to stop there. I know there's a few more verses that we'll talk about towards the end of this lesson. It'll all make sense. Hopefully we can tie it all together. But I'm going to stop right there and we're going to dig in on what we have. So get ready because we got a lot of Q&A here. I'm going to go back to verse 2, 3, and 4. Reread those unless I got a couple questions. Verse 2 said, on the third day, a man came unexpectedly from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head, as in mourning. When he came to David, he bowed to the ground and laid himself face down in an act of great respect and submission. Then David asked him, where do you come from? He said, I have escaped from the camp of Israel. Verse 4, David said to him, how did it go? Please tell me, he answered. The people have fled from the battle. Also, many of the people have fallen and are dead. Saul and Jonathan, his son, are also dead. All right, so let's talk about a few questions here. Based on those, verse 2, 3, and 4, the question, why would this man be in mourning? He just pops up in the camp. Verse 2 says, with his clothes torn and dust on his head, as if he was in mourning. Why is this man in mourning? Now, Deke, these are going to be a lot of questions for you because I know you are a Bible connoisseur.
So if the king is dead, he should be in mourning, but I don't know if he would be in mourning just yet.
Okay. So if the king is dead, he should be in mourning. Okay. That makes sense, right? Good. Good. Why does he lay face down and bow to David? Now remember, David is just a warrior. Why would this man come and bow down himself to David?
Would it be that he knows that he's the coming king?
Possibly. Possibly. I mean, this is whether sometimes you say it or not, people in the city, the people in the village, the people in the town speak for you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here is a man leaving a battle, comes back to David, lays face down before him as great respect, saying, you're it. whether you want to be or not, whether you're living at this point, living in the wilderness, in the woods, hiding out, you're the next dude. You're it. Good. Now, does it sound like, this should be an easy one, does it sound as if Israel won or lost this battle? Not war, battle.
Lost.
Sounds like they lost. Okay. All right. Let's dig in now. Let's go to verse 6 through 10. And the young man who told him explained, by chance, I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear, and the chariots and horsemen of the Philistines were close behind him. When he turned to look behind him, he saw me and called to me, and I answered, here am I. He asked, who are you? I answered him, I am an Amalekite. He said to me, stand up facing me and kill me, for terrible agony has come over me. Yet I still live, and I will be taken alive. So I stood facing him and killed him, because I knew that he would or could not live after he had fallen. Then I took the crown which was on his head and the band which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord. All right, question. How could they be in the middle of a war? And he said, and he just happened to be on Mount Gilboa. There's a war going on. And you all know how wars were. Back in those days, the king wasn't sitting on his chariot on the front line. They usually had him sitting on top of a mountain, secluded, a couple guards, couple men with their bows and arrows and swords kind of surrounded him as he overlooked the battle. So how is it we have this dude now, verse 6, and the young man told him, by chance, I just happened to be on the mountain. This, help me out here. How could he we're in a war, you're either fighting it or running from it, and you just happen to be on this mountain where King Saul is overlooking the war. Somebody talk to me.
Looks like he was just overlooking it too.
So he was overlooking it. What about the guy?
So he's an Amalekite, right? So
he's an Amalekite.
Yeah. So he was not on the side of Israel.
Talk to me. Somebody didn't start reading those. Come on. Talk to me. So he's an Amalekite.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And he just happens to be standing up there by Israel's king. And he just happens to be the one that King Saul calls over and says, can you kill me?
Because what's interesting is we go back to chapter 1, or 1 Samuel. Saul had asked his own armor bearer to kill him.
There we go. Okay, so say that again, because I want everybody to hear that.
Yeah, so in whatever chapter it was, when Saul realized that he had not died, he asked his own armor bearer if he would finish him off for the sole purposes of he didn't want the Amalekites, is that who they were fighting?
That's correct.
Yeah, he didn't want the Amalekites to take him and basically do to his body what they typically would do to people once they killed them.
Right. They were fighting the Amalekites and the Philistines. They had combined. Now, what she's saying, I'll say it again. When Saul gives his account, or the ones that were closest to Saul gives the account, in this same scene, this same war, Saul leans over to his armor bearer. We know who the armor bearers are. They're the ones that the king didn't carry anything. This guy carried everything for him. I'll carry your shield. I'll carry your sword. He even had a cupbearer. If you get thirsty, let me taste it first to make sure that no one's poisoning your wine, king, and then we hand it to you, right? So if anybody is going to be around me that close to the king, it's going to be his armor bearers. So when the account we read in 1 Samuel from the war is Saul leaned over to his own people and said, hey, y'all got to take me. You know how it is. This is kind of like the Asian culture. Those samurais, there was an honor in dying not by the enemy's hand. I'll take my own life before I let you kill me. right?
Right.
There's an honor in this. So Saul is saying there is no way that if Israel's going down, I'm going to let one of those dudes kill me. I'll have one of my own. So now let's fast forward to where we're at. David's in a sticky situation. Here's some dude who walks up to him with the crown of Israel. One, he's not an Israelite. He's a Amalekite. Two, he looks like he's in mourning. And the Bible says that he had his hair and all that. But why are you in mourning and it's not your king? Three, why would the king ask you, who we got beef with you, why did he ask you to kill him? All right, guys, let's start digging in.
You know what I think is interesting, what Christy was speaking of, supposedly it appeared that he was dead by
Okay.
his own man.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it's interesting when you think, like, is there some untruth here? There's a couple of things that could be going on. Okay, was Saul actually already dead? And the young man saw him dead and he took his armor because he said, okay, well, then I can get favor with David if I, take this to him, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
could do that. Or was Saul really not dead? Did his guy not actually take him out? And this young man came and saw him, and Saul asked him to kill him. So it seems like it could be going both ways. That I was just
Yeah.
thinking in a couple ways.
Because we
No, I
know
love it.
we know the armor bearer didn't kill him.
We do?
Didn't we find what has that happened yet? I thought that did not happen. That the armor bearer refused to kill him. Oh, gotta go back and look now. Hold, please.
Come on, man. Yeah. Do you bring your notes back out from last
It
month?
did. I remember that. Because then he asked him and he told him he couldn't do it. He wasn't strong.
So-
He was too weak himself.
So the armor bearer was too weak from war himself to do it.
I don't know if he was too weak. I know I'm right on this one. I know I'm right on this one.
All right. Well, hey, y'all know.
Okay, well, I could be wrong too, Christy.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no,
you're
Got your
not
back.
wrong. You just
No,
not.
in
I
God
think
we
it's-
trust. All else bring data. Bring your notes. What you don't say?
I know
Right?
the armor bearer did not kill him.
Okay,
And
so
when
the armor bearer didn't kill him. So now that leaves open. Maybe, as this young man said, he turned and looked at me and asked me who I am. I told him. Here it is, verse 8. He asked me, who are you? So maybe the armor bearer punked out, didn't want to do it. So he looks, verse 8, well, who are you? I answered him, I'm an Amalekite. Verse 9, he said to me, stand up facing me and kill me. So maybe his story does check out. I don't want to answer it right now because it sounds like we need some more details to come up with a good conclusion. Because here's what's happening as we now have the luxury of sitting back with fans, air conditioner, coffee, and water, kind of dissecting this. David doesn't have this luxury. This is real time for David. I've got all these men who are warriors standing behind me, and we've got this dude in our camp who has the crown. Y'all, somehow he got the crown off the king's head. I got to make some type of decision right now. I don't have the luxury of a fan in the air conditioner. I got to do something right now. So, and here's the last part. The dude addresses him and says, and I have brought them here to my Lord. Back in those days, that's what you called the king, my Lord, my master, whatever, right? He addresses David as my Lord. This dude is very, very humble and has so much reverence for David. Let's move on. Let's go to verse 11.
I had a question.
Oh, okay. I can't see. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, Saul was fighting what, the Amalekites? Am I correct?
That was part of it, yes.
Now, did David had just come out of, I believe, did he just come out of fighting the Philistines, but was the Amalekites with the Philistines, or are those the same people?
We're gonna talk about that. See, that's why I told you, Deke, it's gonna be a lot because you're connoisseur. You're walking
Yeah.
down, you're going right down the path that we're gonna head. So can I put that on the post-it board? We're gonna hang it right there just for a second. We're gonna come back and answer that question. That's a great question. Great question. Let's jump into verse 11 right now. This is the response from David. Then David grasped his own clothes and tore them in mourning. So did all the men who were with him. They mourned and wept and fasted until the evening of Saul and Jonathan, his son, for the Lord's people and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword in battle. David said to the young man who informed him, "Where are you from?" He answered, "I am the son of a foreigner, an Amalekite." David said to him, "How is it that you were not afraid to put out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" David called on one of the young men and said, "Go execute him." So he struck the Amalekite and he died. David said to the fallen man, "Your blood is on your own head. For your own mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed." Here's the first question. Why would David kill an innocent man that was just following the request or instruction of the king? David just killed an innocent man. Why would he do that?
Because the man killed the anointed one. God had
Okay.
anointed Saul, and David had all opportunities to kill him. And if he still honored his position, why would any other man have the right to kill him?
Okay. All right. So you're right. So he's saying, hey, if I was going to honor the head man, you definitely should. But this new dude just came and said, you're the new head man. You just killed him, David. In front of all the new people. So they now know or think, well, dang, our king will execute you even if you are innocent. Let's not answer that. Let's dig in. Because this next question is going to pop open a whole can here. Who are the Amalekites? Because if this guy is an Amalekite, who are the Amalekites? Everyone told me that, Israel had a little conflict with them and all that. Let's dig in now and detail out who are the Amalekites. Okay?
Okay.
So if you notice, when we first started, I named this the family business. Why would the title of this lesson be family business? We're talking about war. We're talking about a king who just died. We're talking about a guy. We're still trying to find out, did he really kill the king because the armor bearer didn't? Was he trying to uphold the value of a king being fallen but not taken by the enemy? A lot of things going on. Family business. So in order to talk about family, let's talk about the top of a family tree. Okay, let's talk about the brothers. I want to hit rewind on this. I want to mow down the grass so we can kind of dig in a little bit deeper and see what's behind some of these tall weeds. Let's go all the way back to Isaac and Rebekah. You all remember Isaac and Rebekah. At the top of this family tree, you have the parents, Isaac and Rebekah. Well, those are the two that had two kids. Jacob, in fact, they were twins, Jacob and Esau. And you all remember Jacob was a shepherd. He was the one that tricked his brother Esau out of his birthright, or what we would call the blessing from their father, Jacob, right? Now, here's what's good about Jacob. After all that, later on in life, God renames Jacob and calls him Israel, okay? He's called Israel. So that means anyone that comes out of my descendant, anyone comes from me, comes from Israel. They actually named the whole nation Israel after this young man here, Jacob. Okay? His other brother, twin brother, was the older brother of the twins. He was the one that was red and hairy, remember? He was a hunter. Okay? He was the one, and in fact, it said a skilled archer, bow and arrow. I highlighted that. I'll come back to that later. Remember that though. A skilled archer with the bow and arrow. Esau. Esau hated Jacob. We're seeing that today. Jacob, the house of Israel, Esau, isn't that what's going on the news now? The Palestinians in Israel, aren't they fighting now? These are the two same brothers at the top of this family tree, the two twins that came out. They hate each other to this day. You have the exact same. Who right now is bombing Israel? Esau's people. Right now, literally this morning, we are still reading about the war between these two twins. The Bible says they were even kicking each other. They were born in Rebekah's womb. They've been going at it since the womb. So since they were born, everyone that came out of Jacob was known as Israel or the Israelites. Here we go. Esau, they became skilled archers, bow and arrow. That means that they were warriors from the get-go. We always gonna have beef. Even into 2024, these brothers and their bloodline are still fighting. All right, let's keep walking. Let's look at this family tree. So now we got Jacob and Esau. So let's talk about Esau for a little bit. Esau's sons. Esau, of course, he's a brother. He goes ahead, he gets married. Let's go to Genesis 36 and 12. Verse 12 tells us about Esau. Esau's son, Eliphaz, also had a concubine. Y'all know what that is. That's a side piece. Okay, I'm going to read that again for you, Deke. I'm going to take that one slow. Esau's son, he had his son. He had a side chick named Timnah, who bore him a kid by the name of Amalek. So that means anybody that came from Amalek was called a what? An Amalekite. These were the grandsons of Esau. I'm going to read all that again. So now we start to find out where these Amalekites came from. Esau's son had a concubine, a side piece named Timnah, who gave him a son by the name of Amalekite or Amalek. So the Amalekites are the grandsons of Esau. They're the ones that hate Israel. Since birth, our people have been fighting Israel since birth. So Amalek was Esau's grandson. Again, remember, he hated Jacob, the other twin and cousin or descendants family, which was called Israel. All right. So on this mountain, I got two standoffs. I got David, who comes from the family or bloodline of Israel, going back and forth with some kid who just delivered Israel's crown. But he's not from our family. He is from the family. He's just on the other side. Y'all know how that goes at the family reunion. He is from Esau's side. They hate us. All right, let's take it a step further. Who were the Amalekites? They were the very first enemies that Israel encountered when they crossed the Red Sea. As soon as they came out of Egypt, Moses does his great wonder with the wand, with the rod. They go in. The next thing we know, people are complaining. They're talking about how thirsty we are. You done brought us out here to die. This is crazy. You know how we are, right? This is crazy. I couldn't stay at the house for this. We out here about to die. Okay, cool. Moses goes to the Lord. The Lord says, hey, man, listen, go hit that rock, strike it, boom. There's going to be some water come out. You got to keep them calm for a little bit. Let's move on. So this is verse 8. After that conversation and after Moses goes and makes the water come from the rock, Exodus 7, 8, 9, we hop right in. And it says, as this is going on, people are tired, they're weary. Boom, verse 8. Then Amalek and his people came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, hey, Joshua, choose us some men to go out and fight against Amalek and his people. Because tomorrow I'm going to stand on the top of the hill with this staff of God in my hand. Fast forward to verse 13. So Joshua overwhelmed and defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. This is the first time we see the Amalekites and the Israelites having to fight. Verse 14. Then the Lord said to Moses, hey, Moses, this is how important this is. Write this in the book as a memorial and recite it to Joshua, that I will utterly wipe out the memory of Amalek and his people from under heaven. That came from God himself. Verse 15. And Moses built an altar and named it, the Lord is my banner, saying, the Lord has sworn an oath. The Lord will have war against the people of Amalek from generation to generation. Wow. It's one thing for us to make an oath when God himself said, listen, I'm going to take care of this. From generation to generation, I'm going to take care of this group of people. Verse, let's see, 1 Samuel 15, 2 and 3. Now remember, we just talked about 1 Samuel. We were just in that book last month. And this is where God gives Saul this is what you were talking about, Deke. God gives Saul a clear mission on what he was supposed to even be fighting. This was your mission, Saul. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel. I should say, when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go attack the Amalekites and totally, not some of them, totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children, infants, cattle, sheep, camels, and donkeys. That is why Saul was called to the throne. You got here's your mission. All that other stuff was cool, but your mission, here was your mission from God. I need you to stand behind what I told Moses. I'm going to take care of this from generation to generation. Saul, it's your turn to utterly destroy this thing. Let me ask you before I even click, did Saul fulfill his mission? Maybe not even mission. Can I put it in church terms? Did he fulfill his calling? David's calling the anointed one. Did he fulfill his calling?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Not spared.
Okay.
Pastor Gary, restate your question, please.
So based on 1 Samuel 15, 2-3, this was what Saul's mission. This is the whole reason this war that we're reading about now. We're on the back end of it. What happened at the war? The whole reason for the war was Saul was supposed to go and totally destroy the Amalekites. Saul's wandering around looking for David. Forget that. The Lord told him in verse 2 and 3, I need to punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go and attack. This is him talking to Saul. Go attack the Amalekites and totally destroy. Do not spare them. Put them all to death. I want every man, woman, child, infant, all the cattle, all the sheep, all the camels, everything totally destroyed. Now we've got his crown being brought to David. Did Saul complete his mission?
David or Saul?
Saul.
Did Saul complete his mission?
Yep. Because it was, yep. Based on 1 Samuel 15, 2 and 3.
Well, no, he couldn't have if there's an
Okay.
Amalekite still living. No.
There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. That's all I needed right there. So we have one Amalekite we know of, at least one, that's still living. So now let me go back to that first question. Was this an innocent man that David killed?
No.
Leave it right there. Let's also, I want to kind of dig in kind of why it's so important. I don't know why, but why is it so important? Or a little bit more details on laws for Israel, particularly their kings. We saw various laws handed out back in Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy 25. I just took some snapshots of a few of them from Deuteronomy 25. The first one, verse 1 says, if there's a controversy between men and they go to court and the judges decide to issue between them, this is if they go to court, then it shall be that if the guilty man deserves to be beaten, da 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 da. So they even have some laws on if you go to court, how you're supposed to handle it. Have him beaten 40 times. It was very specific. I don't want it going 41 or don't make it 39. If he's guilty, he gets beat 40 times. Verse 4, you shall not muzzle the ox while he's in the threshing to prevent him from eating of any grain, meaning don't torture your animals that are working for you. Even 5, if brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, the widow of a deceased shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Okay, let's skip down to verse 17. So these are all the laws that God is handing out to Israel. He puts in this same chapter. This is how important it is to him. We could talk about what happens if you go to court, how you deal with the animals that work for you, how to deal with brothers that die, and what we're going to do with the widow, the wife. We can talk about all that. But don't forget this here. Verse 17. Remember what Amalek did to you along the road when you came from Egypt. How he met you along the road and attacked all the stragglers. That means all the old people, the ones that were weary and tired, at your rear when you were tired and weary, and he did not fear God. Therefore, the Lord your God has given you rest from all your surrounding enemies in the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance to possess. You shall wipe out the memory. I'm going to say that again. You shall wipe out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. You must not forget this. This is pretty important to God. He keeps throwing it in Israel's face. Even in their day-to-day dealings with each other and animals and how to live, he keeps inserting, but I still don't want y'all to forget the ones that attacked you when we became free, when we left Egypt, crossed over the Red Sea. There's a group that I still don't want you all to forget. They have to be annihilated. That's a good word. So let's go back to 13. Let's go back to our scene with David. Now we know who the Amalekites are. Let's go back to David again. We're back on the mountain or behind the mountain now. David said to the young man, now who informed you? Where are you from? He answered, I am the son of a foreigner, an Amalekite. David said to him, how is it that you were not afraid to put your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? David called for one of his men and said, go execute him. All right, let's skip down. Judgment time. So David holds his first court hearing. As kings, you got to hold a hearing. That was your job, was to judge. Even Samuel, all the judges, everyone, if you were called to that seat, you were going to have to decide between right and wrong. So here we have David, before he is a king, officially holding his first court hearing, because this is what this really turns into. First court, the question in court, where are you from? That's what David asked him. The guy answered, I am a son of a foreigner. I'm an Amalekite. David now asks him, as being an Amalekite, why did you touch the sword? You're Esau's descendant. You guys don't even deal with swords. Remember, I highlighted it. You guys deal with bows and arrows. That's what your clan deals with. You don't even know how to use a sword. You come telling me that Saul asked you to touch the sword? The Israelites, we deal with swords, right? Remember, we talk about the ephod and where the sword was hidden and yada, yada, yada. We deal with the swords. Your clan deals with bows and arrows. So what are you doing even touching a sword of Israel? After David really kind of dug through this and found out, yeah, this dude, I don't know if he was really helping us, or did he sneak up behind the enemy line or Israel's line? And here he is standing there with King Saul, and he put him to death. Whether Saul asked, I don't believe Saul would have asked after he said, who are you? And the kid told him, I'm an Amalekite. Why would I have the enemy kill me anyway? I might as well just say, forget it. Let's go down and charge. Let's go down the hill. Let's get it done. If I'm going to go die in battle, not let this dude do it. I don't know. So either way, David had him executed. You can't execute anyone unless you're the king. Unless you have power. I understand you can kill someone. Oh, another guy in the army, you can kill someone, but the Bible explicitly uses the word execute. Now we start seeing whether David has the crown or not, whether there has been a ceremony or not, whether everybody's been called to City Hall to anoint who's the king. Everything now is stacking up. David, you're it. For the Bible to use the word, or David to even use the word, go execute, David himself is now, I've taken on the mindset of, if King Saul's out the way, there ain't nobody else in the world, in this nation, the nation of Israel, that can use the word execute except the next king. Go execute him. So David, after he had him executed, he also let all know that he was not innocent, but he testified out of his own mouth. There it is. We're back in court. He testified out of his own mouth against himself to have touched one of God's chosen. Please note that a foreigner or a Gentile could not just kill a Jew or one of God's people and get away with it. This is how we know King Saul probably did not ask this kid to do nothing. This was a dude that decided to take it in his own hands and to win favor with who's Israel's going to be Israel's next king. Thinking, as you said, I think you said this earlier, Sister Collins, he was going to try to win favor with David since he knew he was the next one. And who was going to come and get his people? Because it's been written, you got to wipe out the Amalekites. So he was trying to win some, as some would say, some brownie points. I brought the crown to you. Only a king could pass such judgment and continue to handle family business. So really we see this whole thing is about handling what God told them back after they crossed the Red Sea, wipe out the Amalekites. Saul, you let one go. We know for sure there's one here. And we're going to read on. There's still some left. David, this just starts David's hunt for him, trust me. But the rest of the verse, so we had our court ruling. We were able to sort through, was this guy really helping bringing the crown? Yeah, he brought the crown to David, but it was from the enemy's hand, the two warring twins. We still see that. But then verse 17 and on, as it says, verse 17, then David sang this funeral song over Saul and Jonathan. And he told them to teach the sons of Judah the song of the bow. That's very important. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. Now, I'm going to let you read the rest of this because now we see David going from warrior, king, executor, to he bounces right back into, now I'm going to write a song for their funeral. I got to go back into mourning. You talk about being able to switch hats and being able to play different roles. David could do it all. He could do it all. I understand when guys say, look, he's a man after my own heart. Y'all get tripped up on some of these other things. David does it all. He will kill you, execute you, and then turn around and write a song for the funeral and make sure everybody is going to be recorded in the book called the Bible. And on top of that, the song is called the Song of Bow. Now, hold on. Israel, you've always used swords. But obviously, David is transitioning again. The last time we saw David transition weaponry, chosen weapons, it was a sling and a rock to execute the Philistines. Then he picked up the Philistine sword, watch it, cut his head off. Now, all of a sudden, Israel's fighting with swords. In fact, the same sword he used, they hid in the tabernacle behind the altar until David needed it again. So Israel's been fighting with sword during this period. Now, all of a sudden, he's saying, hey, I'm going to make a song, but we're going to call it the Song of the Bow. And it'll be interesting to see the warfare of Israel as we move through 2 Samuel and on. What form of instruments or what weapons do they use? Are they still using sword, or have they decided to start using the bow? Now, if I'm David, I would have taken a look at that too. You just told me Israel just got beaten this war. Well, maybe that bow thing is working. If I can strike from a distance, I need to start teaching these people, going down to the bottom, verse 27, how the mighty have fallen and the weapons of war have perished. Maybe we need to reevaluate. This is what I love about David. David's not afraid to reevaluate. If it's not working, let's move. Going down to 27, the bottom of the screen. At the end of his song, how the mighty have fallen and the weapons of war, their weapons of war, have perished. Wow. And he told Israel, make sure we record this, because we're going to start moving in a different direction on how we fight the enemy. If it's given to us to wipe out the enemy, we got to wipe them out. But sometimes the hand-to-hand combat won't do it. We may have to change the weapon we use in war. Family business.
I love this. Gary, this
Oh
is
my goodness. Any
amazing.
questions?
This is good. This is so good. This is so good. It's so good. I'm so clear on the Amalekites. I thought I was up until today, and I wasn't clearly. But now I am. But I love this, your analogy at the end, because as we think about the practical application and think about us as leaders, we have to be constantly evolving.
Yes, ma'am.
We have to be constantly evolving. What we did last week, even because of how fast things are moving, is not sufficient. And if we're not looking at our enemies or those around us who are doing it well and saying, okay, what are they doing that we're not doing? How do we need to adapt? If we're not doing that, weapons of war will perish, right? And the people along with it. So I love that. Just excellent. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions? Well, I want to thank you all, because this only works with the Q&A. We talk through this, work through this. Everyone's chiming in and throwing in ideas and concepts and things that we've studied and notes, and I love it. It just all comes together. That's how it should be. I appreciate you all.
Hey, Gary,
Okay.
excuse me.